It's time to talk about the Clone Wars. The show has returned to Disney Plus for a final season. I'm extremely excited about this because I'm a huge fan of the show, and we're going to get into it right after this. Clone Wars Season 7 starts with a 4-episode arc about the Bad Batch. That's what we're going to be discussing right now, as long as the internet gods don't frown upon us, as they have been all day. So we're going to jump in. And Greedo, give me your take on your feelings about Clone Wars being back, how you think the first 4 episodes have gone, just kind of the overall vibe that you're taking from this at this point.
Well, I'm extremely happy and to have more Star Wars content. And I was never the biggest fan of the original Clone Wars, probably because of the movie. The movie wasn't all that great. There's issues there that have been well documented, but I also had to adjust to the animation style, which is, computer generated, and I was more of an old school, hand drawn anime and animation and all that stuff. But in the last, I don't know, 10 years or since it's been off the air, really, and since I had Netflix and things like that, and I'm able to go back and watch them, I started watching them in bits and pieces. And really, what hit me right off the bat of giving it a second chance was the quality of the episodes and the animation. Once you get used to the characterizations and the style, like Dooku is very stylized, Obi-Wan's very stylized. You have to get used to that. If it doesn't strike you as great right off the bat, you have to give it a minute. But I found out later that they were spending like $1 million per episode at least, and it really shows in a lot of those as the series goes on. Plus, the show gets really dark and violent.
Yeah,
and
it really does. It's the themes are quite adult. Yeah.
Yeah, they sneak a lot of stuff in there, and of course, the recurring theme of identity and power and what you choose to do with the power and everything, and what you choose to do with your agency as opposed to following orders and all that is pretty mature stuff. They pack a lot in 22 minutes or whatever they were.
Yeah, no,
so
they really do.
I still can't swear that I've seen every single episode, but I would go in Jags where I would watch a storyline and then skip ahead to a description that looked like another storyline I wanted to see. And that's kind of one of the cool things about it. You can kind of do that if you want to.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite storylines in all of Clone Wars was the Citadel, I believe it was called, which showed you the dark side of being a clone and following the Jedi's orders, and the Jedi are willing to sacrifice the clones one by one, and they feel remorseful about it, but not really. That's the clone's function. But it really gave you some haunting images of the violent ends these clones meet and how that impacts the ones left over eventually as the series continues, which is still going on in this new series. So yeah, I'm super happy to have it back, but I'm not as big a fan as you are, and I'm not as familiar with all the ins and outs, storylines, characters. I get it. I get some of the timelines confused because of the way they're sandwiched in between the different movies and things like that. But I know enough to enjoy it and keep up with it. So very excited to have it back, and it's been great. So
absolutely,
I hope they renew it again. How many more stories can they squeeze out between the movies?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they could come up with more, but we are kind of nearing the end because they're getting closer and closer to, Order 66 and all that, and obviously that takes place during Episode 3, so we can't go quite to that. I mean, technically they could just be showing characters that that we don't see on screen in the movies. But anyway, I'm very excited. Obviously, like you were saying, I've been a big fan of the show from day one. I enjoy the animation style, but like you, I was not a fan of the movie. I remember walking out of the movie thinking, "What was that?" I just didn't like it. I like it better now on rewatch, but that's because knowing what I know how the show evolved. And within context now I get it. And it's like, okay, I get it now. I really, at the time, hated the Ahsoka character. I grew to love the Ahsoka character because they matured her character, and she was just the whining little snot-nosed brat, as it were, in the Clone Wars movie. And then they grew the character up, and she became a very likable character in the end. So yeah, and the animation style also evolved. Because if you compare season 1 and the movie stuff to what's going on now in season 7, it's worlds apart. They've really grown the animation style and evolved as it's gone on, and everything that goes into that show is what I love. The original music they created for it, the writing style I think is fantastic. The fact that there are adult themes, it's not, yes, it's animated, but it's not geared towards children necessarily. They're going to watch it because it's a cartoon and because it's Star Wars, but the themes
and because
are
of
dark.
all the Lego toys that went with it.
Yes, exactly.
That got a lot of kids on board.
and it's but it's dark, in a lot of ways. They have no problems killing off characters. It's
No.
not quite to Game of Thrones level, but it's, they'll get you
Well
interested in a
established
character,
characters a lot
and
of
then they're
times
dead.
too.
Yeah, that's the thing. They'll get you, to like a character, and then, oh, they're dead. And sometimes it's a very horrific death. It's not just an off-screen thing. Oh yeah, so and so died. It's actually something pretty graphic that they show right there on the screen. So I don't know. I grew to really like the show pretty much right off the bat, after the movie, after the disappointment of the film. Okay, so you mentioned the Citadel. That's an interesting kickoff point, because that's where we originally lost the clone character of Echo.
Oh,
And
that's right. That was that
yeah.
sequence, wasn't it?
So it's kind of ironic that you mentioned that. So this 4 episode story arc, we're going to call the Bad Batch story arc, starts with episode 701. And the name of that, of course, is the Bad Batch. And where we pick up, basically, we're having a battle for the planet called Anaxis, between the Republic and the Trade Federation and the Separatists. Anakin and Mace Windu are the ones who are sort of leading. They're defending the Republic shipyards against attacks from one of the Separatists generals, or excuse me, admirals, Admiral Trench. Now, this is a character who appeared as far back as season 1, if I'm not completely it's either season 1
so.
or early season 2.
Yeah.
But I've always thought it was a very fascinating character. He's basically a giant spider.
Right.
He's just the head of a
With
tarantula,
a
basically.
monocle and
Right.
all this stuff, right?
Well, and you can see that. I think it's interesting because the character is so neat looking, because he's clearly sustained battle damage in the past. He's almost like half artificial. He's got a couple of artificial arms and things like that. He's really well drawn and well done, well generated, I should say. But anyway, so we've got. I love the fact that they brought that character back. I thought he was really cool, because it's a throwback again to to the beginning of the Clone Wars. So it kind of helps tie everything together. But basically, the whole storyline ultimately revolves around the fact that the Republic is losing. The Jedi are losing against Separatists, even though they have successful attacks against the Separatists. The counterattacks are less and less successful. And what ultimately they determine is that there is an algorithm that's being used by the Separatists to predict their attacks, and they don't understand where that's coming from. So the point of the episode is trying to figure out what is the source of this algorithm. Where are they finding out how they're going to attack them, and they're adjusting so well. So that's what we get into. And they called in a special group of clones to help with this, and this is the group called the Bad Batch. And there are 4 very unique clones who this idea originated, by the way, from George Lucas back when he was working with Dave Filoni on the Clone Wars originally, that he wanted to kind of see what, because the clones themselves are supposed to be literally carbon copies of one another, clones. So he wanted to see, well, maybe some of them didn't quite come out as planned, but they're still functioning and they still have their own unique personalities. And that's basically what we've got here. So we've got 4 unique personalities here with these clones. And obviously they're not, like they call them regs, meaning regulars. They're their own thing. They don't answer to anybody but themselves. They don't, they just kind of go out and do their own thing and take care of business, as it were. But I think the characters they have are really interesting. Let me actually get the names of the different characters here. I know we've got. Let me see. Do you recall the names off the top of your head?
I remember Wrecker and Crosshair,
the big guy.
Either Crosshair or Crossfire. It was the sniper guy. Is it Hunter? Is Hunter the leader?
Hunter and Tech, yeah.
Hunter
Hunter
and
is the
Tech,
leader, and
yeah.
Tech is of course the guy who's like the computer communications guy who
Hmm.
anytime they have technical problems, he's like their IT guy, as it were. Um, so anyway, so yeah, those are the four characters here, and they team up with Captain Rex and Commander Cody. So Captain Rex is the one who comes up with this idea that perhaps they're getting fed information from a former clone trooper that they thought was dead, Echo. And he's come to this idea. He's come to this conclusion. You know, the Jedi aren't necessarily on board with this idea, but they're willing to let him go try it out and search and see what they can find. So that's basically what happens. They ultimately send the Bad Batch along with Commander Cody, Captain Rex behind enemy lines to try and get to this outpost that has the control center that's going to give them access to see where this algorithm is originating from, and that's basically where the story goes from there. So what did you think of kind of the story and how it played out and all of that? Were you did you find it interesting, boring? What did you think?
No, I thought it was interesting. I did think it was very, very action heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes I wanted it to slow down a little bit, like especially when they got to the tower and they were fighting in that room and in the corridor and stuff. It was just kind of one wave after another of droids, and
Mm-hmm.
the Bad Batch kind of became like superheroes a little bit too much. Like it was a little too easy for them. They were
Mm-hmm.
just mowing through droids like it's no problem
Yeah, they
whatsoever.
really were.
So and that's kind of a common problem with the prequels too, is that the stormtroopers, stormtroopers are
Mm-hmm.
really powerful until they run into the heroes. Then they're
Right.
useless. Sheridan can beat him with a stick even though he's blind. So he has no blaster or anything. So it's kind of the same thing here, but you just kind of they made that decision to just have fun with it and mow through some droids and show the how kind of strong in a team, even though they're not. You wouldn't pick them as a coherent team because, like you said, they don't take orders really, but
Right.
they know how to complement each other and work together.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they're seasoned from the very beginning, but no, what story was there was interesting enough. It brought in this old villain, the tarantula guy, was it Trench,
Mm-hmm.
who I
Admiral
recognized.
Trench. Yep.
Yeah, and then it
Mm-hmm.
also brought in the Techno Union because there's a connection there where is it the Techno Union where they were holding Echo, or was I can't remember, but they were bouncing the signal back and forth from the Techno
Right.
Union homeworld to this
They were
place.
holding him at where the Techno Union headquarters are,
Right. So you
basically.
end up
Yeah.
having those people involved too. So you get some, some races and cool things and villains and stuff from the Clone Wars. Uh, I did like all the conflict between the clones and
Mm-hmm.
how they kind of resolved that and learned to respect each other as the
Right.
episodes went on.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I watch for when there's heavy characterization and drama, it's a pleasant surprise.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, I'm watching for the action, and to kind of get engaged on that level and stuff. So to me, this was a big, awesome way to kick it off.
Yeah.
Reintroduce the clones. I was pleasantly surprised they kept away from the Jedi characters until like the third episode or something for
Mm-hmm.
the most part,
Yeah, I
because
agree.
I think the clones they deserve their own episodes and their own arcs and shows and stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
I do want to say the guy who does their voices, I'm curious if you know, did he do the Bad Batch voices as well? Because if so, this guy
I
just continues
believe you
to
did.
amaze.
Yes.
He just continues
Yeah.
to amaze with his
Yeah.
vocal talent, how he can make characters sound like the original prequel character, Jango Fett, Tamara Morrison,
Yeah.
and yet give them their own identities and stuff. And he knows when to make them sound the same, when to give them variations, and how to. I mean, I don't know how he does it. It's crazy, and and you still identify with these characters even though they're clones. That's one of the big
Mm-hmm.
accomplishments of the show, I think. But
Yeah.
but no, it was a good story. It kept moving. And it didn't really have a time for you to think about the fallacies and stuff involved in it and everything. They
Mm-hmm.
also had a kind of an interesting little storyline in there about the native population on the one planet, I think the Union planet, and how
Right.
they had to decide whether to become allies with the Republic or stay out of it, or
Mm-hmm.
allies with the Techno Union, who they seem to have already had problems with. So anyway, a lot going on, and I really enjoyed it. My favorite though was it really got good at the end. I thought the last episode was really really good.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
But
fantastic! Yeah,
all of
absolutely.
them were quality, and
Right.
a lot going on. They really packed a lot in. I was wondering, one of my big test points for me was going to be looking at the new episodes. Do they look significantly cheaper than the old ones? I don't know how to qualify that except to say, when you see it, like, do they look like a lesser quality? And I couldn't really
I
tell a
didn't see
difference.
that at all. Yeah, I thought it
So I
was
was pleasantly
fantastic.
surprised that Disney was willing to put in the money to continue
Mhm.
the show in fashion, and in the same way we were used to seeing it. I would have hated to seen something that looked like other products they put out. I want one of
Right.
those. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, that's my overall initial thoughts.
Hmm. But yeah, agreed. And yes, just to confirm what you were saying, it is D. Bradley Baker who does the voice of not only all the clones, but he does do all four
Wow.
of the
Yeah.
new Bad Batch clone members as well. So yeah, no, he's phenomenally talented voice actor
He's kind
to
of
be
the
able to come up with all
MVP
those
of the
voices.
show, voice wise, I
He's
think.
really good. Yeah, yeah, he is. I mean, the whole cast is phenomenal. I mean, they really
Yeah.
are. I think back to the celebration from, I don't know the number, but 2012, when in Orlando, and they had most of the cast there sitting on the stage and literally just reading off of scripts in character, and it was so great, just seeing like the live, actors there reading their characters back and forth and interacting with
Oh
one
wow,
another.
that's great.
That was
Yeah.
such a phenomenal moment. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, that was really cool. But yeah, these are all a group of amazingly talented individuals. But yeah, D. Bradley Baker just kind of goes above and beyond with all of those voices he creates. So yeah, so overall, as far as the four-story arc is concerned, we do find out that the Techno Union and the Separatists have captured the previously thought to be dead Echo clone trooper, and they've got him basically literally wired into their computer almost, as it were, and
Okay.
they know, because he knows all the battle strategies, so they're able to basically read his mind, as it were, and know what's going to be coming next, and they're able to kind of move, to defend themselves before the attack even happens. So that's how they're able to defeat the Jedi every time. So they're able to get Echo back. They take him back with them, um, and like there's that sort of like the one planet they end up getting to where where the planet they get to where they actually save Echo. The name of the planet escapes me right now, but where they save him. However, they're of course being attacked, and they have to escape on these flying beasts, which was an interesting scene. They go back to the locals who, the locals, and it's kind of a typical theme, I think, in Clone Wars. They go to these planets, and everybody on these planets always want to stay neutral. Don't bring the war to us. We have nothing to do
Right.
with your war. We're not taking sides, and it's always about, you got to take sides. Ultimately,
Yeah, yeah, the war
war's
is
here.
here. Right.
You got to take sides. You can't just say go away. So they end up fighting, of course, on the side of the Republic and the Jedi, and end up eventually freeing Echo and getting away. And of course, the very end, you saw it coming. Echo is no longer a reg, after what all
Right.
has happened to him, and the sort of cybernetic, attachments they've added to him and all this kind of stuff. It's almost like a Borg now.
Yeah, he is a Borg basically. Yeah.
It's
A
basically what's
recovered
happened to him.
Borg. Yeah.
He's been assimilated. Yeah, he's an
Yeah.
XB now.
Echo
If you watch
Cutis.
Picard, he's an XB. Yeah.
He's an
So
XP. Yeah.
he ends up choosing at the end, of course, to join the Bad Batch, which I thought was an interesting way of taking it, because he figures he's too far gone to ever kind of get back to the way things used to be, and just be a regular clone trooper as he was before. So he ends up joining the Bad Batch, and obviously, based on the fact that this is only going to be a 12 episode wrap up for the show, that's, I'm sure, the last we'll ever see of that character in the Bad Batch, which kind
Mm.
of stinks in a way, because they were such great characters. It makes me want to see more stories with them involved.
I wouldn't be so
Um,
sure of that, because every time we thought we've seen the last of things like this, they find a way to bring them back, and Filoni's not going anywhere, right? This is his life's work,
no,
basically, as far as we know.
it really
So
is.
there's going to be further projects from him, and they've shown a penchant for setting shows and projects in different timelines. So you wouldn't even necessarily have to go past the Civil War. like they did with Rebels, like an older Rex and stuff. You could have the Bad Batch. That might be one reason they put Echo in there, is to have a familiar character if they spin these characters back up and use them somewhere.
And Filoni also has proven that, I mean, he loves revisiting things. No matter what project he does, he always brings back those characters again to see them in storylines again.
And there's no
he
way
loves intertwining that stuff.
I don't think there's any way the Bad Batch is going to participate in Order 66. I don't even think they have that programming in there, really.
No, I don't think so. I don't think they've been programmed that way. Yeah, exactly.
Whatever that,
because of the fact that they were outcasts,
that device or organic thing they have in their brain or whatever it is. I bet you, for some reason, that didn't take with them, or they're so different they'll be able to resist it, or they won't even be around any of the Jedi when Order 66 goes through. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them as a small unit live on as mercenaries or something.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's like you even see ultimately in Rebels, you see the clones who have now gotten older and put on weight, and they're still kind of doing their own thing, and then Rex ends up getting pulled back into the fight, as it were, for basically the last season and a half of Rebels.
And Rex claimed that he never turned on the Jedi, right?
Correct.
He said him and his buddies their squad didn't turn on their Jedi, so that hasn't been shown yet, right? We may see that moment, or we may not. I don't know, but that remains a story untold as well, which is very interesting. I don't know how they pulled that off. I wonder if it has something to do with that whole storyline with Fives, where he discovered. I wonder if Rex's squad somehow ends up with those things neutralized or removed, or if they're just closer to the Jedi than the other clones and stuff. But it's funny because Cody was in these episodes, and Cody is the one that tries to take out Obi-Wan.
Yeah, exactly.
That's pretty cold-blooded.
Yeah, it is interesting.
I wonder if they'll stick in some little reason why Cody wouldn't like Obi-Wan in one of these episodes. That would be pretty funny.
So, getting back to the first episode of season 7, did you catch the direct reference to the original Star Wars film with the dialogue?
No, I did not.
Between the two droids.
What did they say?
So it was right outside when the Bad Batch and Rex and all that were about to infiltrate the.
I remember there was
either the tower or whatever. Anyway, there were two droids standing there, and one of them turned to the other one and said, "Hey, do you know what's going on?" He's like, "No, maybe it's a drill." The exact line between the two stormtroopers. So I knew Filoni put that in there for a direct throwback. It's like, "Hey, you know what's going on? Maybe it's another drill."
I completely that went right over my head. That's awesome.
So, but anyway, overall, I thought the story arc was fantastic. Like you said, it was interesting that they jumped back in with a clone-heavy show episode, or story arc rather, with very limited Jedi until, of course, Anakin gets involved later in episodes 2 and 3. But overall, I just love the show so much, and it's like reuniting with an old friend in a way, to sound maudlin about it, but that's basically what it is. I just love the show so much, and it's just great to have new content. So,
I liked how they just carried the story on where they wanted to. They didn't try to conquer the world and put every single character in the first episode to get you back up to speed. They just continued with the show as if it hadn't stopped or whatever, and that's very cool. I do wish they would just give them another season. I mean, this is the kind of show that you can probably produce under the conditions going on right now, because everybody's shutting down production of everything right now. So we're not going to get new shows. You can have the voice actors do it remotely. You can have the animators work
remotely.
Work remotely as much space as you need. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot more to it than we know. It'd probably be very difficult, but if you just retooled some things, I could see this kind of show continuing and giving content for Disney Plus members and stuff. And I think the numbers for this have got to be pretty big. I don't think the Clone Wars has been forgotten by any stretch of the imagination. And with all the people, the only way I think it could have been bigger is if they had launched it right at the end of The Mandalorian. Well, they still had all those people before some of them canceled. They're like, I've seen The Mandalorian, now I'm going to wait.
I'm going to go,
But I think it'll do really good business for Disney, and with everything going on right now, why not continue it and give people at home something to look forward to, But that's up to the people who make the show. And one fatal mistake you can make, I think, is accepting an offer to continue something that should end. So, we'll see. And they may wrap this all up with a bow by the end. I don't think it'll be that neat, but they might. So, and there might not be anywhere else to go.
It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, yeah. I'm wondering myself kind of how they're gonna wrap it up. But and like you said, they technically don't have to. There's no rule that says you have to put a
No.
bow on it. I'd be surprised if they left it super open-ended. I don't think they'll leave cliffhangers necessarily, but because we technically know the story as it is, we just don't know a lot of the details, and that's what this kind of stuff. That's what shows like Clone Wars do. They fill in the gaps,
Yeah.
and that to me is one of the biggest testaments to the success of the show, and the reason why I like it so much. It's interesting when an animated series can make me like the movies that much more.
Yeah.
Because to me, everything, getting to know these characters, even in animated form, yeah, it's not like watching the movie, but you attach so much more meaning and feeling that by the time you go back and rewatch episode 3, there's so much more gravitas to me,
Yeah.
about the fall of Anakin, that after you just got through watching 7 seasons of him
An actual war, yeah.
fighting
see
this
the whole
actual
war.
war on the right side and doing what he's doing, and then he falls, it makes it so much worse than just going from episode 2 to episode 3.
Yeah.
With all these missing years in between. So that's why I think that's what to me is the importance of these kind of shows. That's why these shows, are so meaningful to me anyway. That's why I enjoy them so much, because it just gives so much more meaning to the characters and makes the movies even better, in my opinion. So
yeah, you get to see so much more of Anakin than just the kind of crummy love story they put in the second, in the Attack of the Clones, and he's still a Padawan in that. And he's still arrogant and pays for his mistakes. He's still a kid basically, and by the time you get to Revenge of the Sith, he's got the scars. He's been through all this stuff that's happening in the Clone Wars, but you get to see him be a leader, and you get to see him make correct decisions, and you get to see his personality traits that would be considered weaknesses actually become strengths, because he's different, and his rashness and his call to action, all the stuff that he's known for actually plays to his advantage a lot in the series. And you also get to see him mentor another Padawan, which is a side of him you would never see until he's Vader later on, and he tries to mentor Luke a little bit. But so yeah, I totally agree on that. And the clones would be nothing but a special effect, really, from the movies if it wasn't for this series. And that's one of the best things I think they did.
And now they all have personalities.
Flesh that out, yeah. And the Clone Wars series as a whole, the biggest thing that impressed me about it, and I can only speculate, but about why this stuff is, but it's so cinematic at points, and this starts happening in the series about season 2 or 3, I think, where they begin putting big establishing shots in different scenes and things instead of just rushing from point to point. And their animation and the art is based on concept art and real art and everything, and it's beautiful. Some of the shots in there are fantastic, and they play with light and they play with sound and everything in a cinematic way. That's one of George Lucas's strengths, is visual storytelling, not necessarily dialogue and stuff. So the visual storytelling in it is way, way above what you'd expect. And once you start catching on to that, I think the show goes to a whole different level, and that's one of the things I will always praise about it. And I think the prequels themselves and this Clone Wars show and everything, a lot of this stuff is Lucas trying to push the boundaries. What can we do with computers? What can we do with green screens? What can we do with digital film? I mean, look at all the stuff they did. They pushed technology-wise a lot. Excuse me. A lot of times, I think the films and everything are almost secondary to what he was trying to accomplish in other ways with all this stuff. So, and so the Clone Wars show, in a lot of ways, is like that as well, I think. And he sunk a lot of his own money into that. That I probably didn't get back. So. He didn't have to do that. So
no. Yeah, but so, I mean, overall, I'm just very happy the show's back. Even if it's just for one more season, any new Clone Wars, I'll take it. And just anything that basically Dave Filoni touches, I pretty much love it. So even in the case of Rebels, which I eventually came to really like, which I did. that's a show got progressively better, I think, each season.
Yeah.
And yeah, while there were a lot of throwaway episodes here and there, I thought overall, I really enjoyed that show ultimately. So yeah, I think it's
Yeah, I think it's
I think
another one that if you select a playlist and watch the
mhm,
best of it and the continuing stories and stuff,
yeah,
it's really good.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely,
again, it suffers from this is a cartoon and the bad guys can't be too bad. They just can't
right,
be.
right,
They
right,
do lose some characters and stuff along the way, but nothing like Clone Wars. And the biggest weakness of Rebels was that, I think. And then you bring in Thrawn, who's supposed to be just a
hmm
total badass, and he's handcuffed because he can't be,
yeah,
because he would
yeah,
wipe the floor with these rebels, no problem whatsoever.
yeah, he would,
But he's not allowed to do it, so he becomes too much of a different character. But I think that's what a lot of us are going to look forward to next, is either a sequel to Rebels or something that will tie in some of these extra universe characters and stuff.
hmm
Um, but I hope they don't change canon. I don't like the term canon. I'm not a canon fan
hmm
person, but I hope they don't change what we know about the original trilogy too much. I hope there's
hmm
not some scene where Ezra Bridger is in the background making sure Luke gets stuff to help him succeed or something. You know what I mean?
right,
Or helping Princess
right,
Leia
yeah,
escape or something. You know what I mean? I
exactly.
hope they don't do anything stupid like that, because those stories need to remain separate. They're separate for a reason. They need to remain separate. But crossing over some of the characters into different realms and adventures and stuff is fine. And
hmm
and I'm also, but I'm eager to see the rest of this season. I'm not, of course, on the level of like the Mandalorian for it, but
hmm
it's pleasant every week to see that they got a new episode, and I do want to
right,
see what all these different storylines are. Um,
hmm
in the future, I've been wondering for a long time if they're going to, with the Mandalorian and with if they do a sequel to Rebels, are they going to explore that time period between the original trilogy and the sequel trilogy at all? And if they
yeah,
do, are they going to have any cameos and stuff from the original trilogy characters in that
hmm
in between time when they're a bit older and stuff?
that would have been
Um,
interesting, yeah.
yeah, it's kind of already been done with the expanded universe, which got canceled out, but
hmm
who knows? All
Yeah.
bets are up.
Yeah, we'll see, and obviously, Lucasfilm seems to be going in a different direction at this point with the
Yeah.
Higher Republic, as the next sort of unveiling of the next direction they're going in, which will start in August of this year. But anyway, but to get back to what you were saying about Rebels, from what I've seen and the stuff I've read, they are planning a season 5 of Rebels that could appear as early as the end of this year. So,
Oh,
so
so they're
that
just going to
apparently is
call it. They're going to revisit the show and call it Rebels still.
right, right. From what I understand, I mean, obviously, it appears. I mean, there's art that's been released from it already, where it
Oh wow,
shows, Ezra
I didn't know that.
Ezra Bridger as a little bit older, a few years older, with like a beard and things like that. Almost looking more like Kanan, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Now.
which makes sense. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. But anyway, so we'll see how that pans out. But yeah, it doesn't look like we've seen the last of Rebels either. So they're going to bring that back and kind of show a little bit more about what happens to those characters.
well, that's good. Yeah,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely.
yeah. I just hope they start moving in the direction of the quality of Clone Wars with their animated projects, and not necessarily the Rebels or Resistance
Resistance,
quality
yeah.
level. Yeah,
hmm
but I mean, you get what you get. I think all this stuff is planned to fit into different niches.
I
You're
think
not
so
going to
too.
get the
Yeah,
same. You can't expect the same result from a Rebels project or from a Resistance project as you can from a Clone Wars. That's why I'm so
exactly.
happy they kept Clone Wars to a certain standard and not bring it down to the newer standards.
Yeah, I wasn't really afraid of them doing that, honestly. I mean,
That was my
because like you
biggest
said,
fear.
all of these shows have their own look and feel, and it would make no
Yeah,
sense to take the Clone Wars with a certain unique look and feel and make it look like Rebels or make it look like Resistance.
yeah,
You're not going to take Clone Wars and turn it into a Saturday morning cartoon. Like
yeah.
basically Resistance look like. So that would have made that just pissed everybody off. So that would have been
Yeah,
senseless.
yeah, it would have,
I
but
mean, not saying it
that
couldn't,
hasn't
not saying it couldn't
stopped
happen,
some
but
people before. And yeah, a lot of times when there's difficulties, people will make monetary decisions over artistic decisions, and that's one thing I can give Disney so far is it's a mixed bag, but they do at least seem to try to make artistic decisions, and not as not limiting Star Wars with the budget as much, but
mhm.
we'll see. I mean, I think it just depends on where they, like I said, where they a project falls. Like Mandalorian, obviously was a flagship thing. They threw money at it. I mean, it was ridiculously expensive.
Absolutely.
But we know they're going to use this technology they've established, and all the people they're training, all the directors, all the writers, they're going to use that to be a launching point and probably be less expensive for other shows and things like that once they get all this technology down. So,
Right.
very interesting
Yeah.
stuff.
No, yeah, and I mean, obviously, like you said, it's so expensive. They were talking Game of Thrones level money,
Yeah,
for Mandalorian, like 10, 13 million an episode, that kind of
yeah.
stuff. But yeah,
Which is
clearly,
why people have to understand when there's filler episodes. It exists in the real world. You just
it
can't,
does. It's
you
harder
can't
to.
just.
It's just harder to take in the streaming age. I mean, I got
Yeah,
nothing against the streaming age. Don't get me wrong. I love the content we're getting. But my biggest problems with it
is the
are the
filler.
limited number of shows that we get, and that we still get filler, even though it's
Yeah,
only 8 or 10 episodes a season. Whereas
yeah,
before, you understand there's filler on a 25
yeah.
episode season. But the other thing is that they're not tied to the network schedule of
Right.
every year the same time, so it can be 2 and 3 years between
Yeah.
seasons, and I
It's
absolutely
more
hate
like
that.
waiting on we used to wait on an album from one of our favorite bands. We never knew when it
Right.
was coming
Yeah,
out.
it's almost, yeah, you have no idea. It could be next year, it could be 5 years
Yeah.
from now. Yeah.
One
That's
thing
why
was
I stopped
guaranteed:
watching.
if they had a huge album, it would take longer.
It would
Because
take
they had more
longer because
money. They didn't need the
they're gonna
money, so they
ride
would
the
wait longer to put out
success.
another. Right.
Exactly. And like for me, I mean, I've given up on shows because of that. I stopped
Mhm.
watching Daredevil, because I watched the first 2 seasons and it was fantastic. And then 3 years. Are you
Right.
kidding me? 3 years until the next season comes out, and then as soon as it's released, like 2 weeks after they said, "Oh yeah, and it's canceled." Like what?
Yeah, that was
We wait 3 years to get a third season, and then you cancel it. So I have literally never seen a single second of season 3. Haven't watched it probably, and I don't care.
gotta watch it. It's good.
Have no interest.
There's some deadly filler in there, but if you can get past that, there was deadly
Mhm.
filler in the first season. I mean, there was
Yeah,
just some
yeah.
slow deadly filler. But I almost wish they're starting to learn. Like the BBC just puts out enough episodes to tell a story, of a series, and they call it done. And that's what streaming's starting to do. But these shows are so expensive that when they order 10 episodes, doesn't seem like much. You end up with a movie. And
You
then a bunch
do
of
a 10-hour movie,
yeah,
basically.
you can
Yeah.
watch the first 2 episodes and the last episode, and you're good. You can skip all the. But that also gives you some good moments, though, where they have to rely on writing again and writing conversations and characterization for people, where you can just put them in a room and have them talk and spend a whole episode. That's sometimes some great content comes out of there. So,
Exactly.
you're a lot of times you're defined by your limitations, not by your excesses. The challenge of overcoming those limitations. So, it's a mixed bag. But you could list series after series after series, and there's just deadly filler in all of them. I mean, there's episodes you just have to slog through, or just pray it turns a corner. Usually, it does. It turns a
Yeah,
corner.
yeah.
They're doing that to survive. I mean, even Star Wars and The Mandalorian, you can't just throw a zillion dollars at the wall every single week. You have to establish it and prove to a lot of people that it can make money and that it's going to succeed and that all that stuff. So we tend to want the moon. We want everything. And so anyway, what are you looking forward to for the rest of this season? I know you're a
Well,
big Ahsoka fan, so I know you're looking forward to that.
Well,
Seeing her.
I like Ahsoka, but yeah, I think honestly, the Siege of Mandalore, which has been promised since prior to the show being canceled, and Dave Filoni has come out, of course, and said that's what we're going to get. So
Right.
I think that's going to be the wrap up of the Clone Wars. Honestly, I think they're just going to wrap it up with that storyline and how Mandalore fell to the Empire. And spoiler, but I think we all know that. But we're going to see how that actually happened. So, because honestly, I know people tend to get split on the whole Mandalore storylines within Clone Wars. They're some of my favorites.
Yeah,
I really enjoyed learning that culture and seeing kind of that planet and the people that make it up. The Death Watch versus regular Mandalore. Things like that. I think is pretty interesting. So, and now of course with the Mandalorian, and we're getting back into that culture. It's kind of prescient that they're gonna have a storyline within Clone Wars about that as well.
Yeah.
So I think that'll only help its popularity. So that's mainly what I think I'm looking forward to at this point.
It's interesting too because, and I'm straying a little bit from Clone Wars again, but I'm looking forward to that as well, and to another whatever they're going to do with Darth Maul, I hope they don't, jump the shark with him. Some might argue they did already, but I don't think so. Um, and I'd love to see any more of Palpatine I can get would be great.
Yeah.
Um, and what was I going to say? Oh, I think the whole Mandalorian thing and the continuity issues of what we see in Clone Wars and Rebels versus what we get in the Mandalorian there's an interesting story there as well. And I don't know if they can resolve those continuity issues, but I'm not really worried about it. And I think what we're seeing out of the Mandalorians in the Mandalorian is almost like a post Alderaan. Like if you were, not everybody that lives on Alderaan was on Alderaan when it was blown up,
exactly.
right? I mean,
Exactly.
they're all over the place. So if you were a survivor of that and trying to rebuild your culture and all that stuff, but you are going to be paranoid and think you're hunted because they took out your planet and and probably the Empire. I don't know. At that point they were trying to promote fear, so maybe they took credit for it. But there could have been all kinds of stories about what happened to Alderaan. So, people who know the truth might be persecuted or put in jail or killed. So anyway, I think this Mandalorian storyline is kind of interesting from that perspective. Is that if you look at it, they're survivors of a cataclysm, and it's changed their culture completely, and they don't have all their original people and stuff, and so they've adapted to survive. I think that's an interesting story, and I love that they're keeping some mystery with it too. So, but I hope we see some of that in this, but I don't know if the timelines match up or not. I don't know if the purge or whatever from the Mandalorian is going to occur in Clone Wars or not. So, I'm just don't know if they're right.
Yeah, we don't know. I mean, I'm not sure if that's going to tie in or not. I know.
When I said the beginning of it or something.
Well, regretfully, I think what we're not going to see, character-wise, characters like Cad Bane, guys like that who I just
there's not enough time.
Yeah, there's just not enough time to have a storyline with Cad Bane at this point. But I would love that. That would be amazing because if you watch our episode about the top 10 favorite, Star Wars characters of all genres, all areas, Cad Bane was in my top 10. Which I think says a lot. I mean, I actually had several Clone Wars characters in there.
You did.
Fives and Cad Bane, all these people. But oh my gosh, the pirate.
Hondo Ohnaka.
Hondo Ohnaka, yeah, he's also great,
Yeah, he's
and of course
phenomenal.
he obviously transformed into Rebels and all that stuff too. We've seen him in multiple shows, but anyway, I would love to see the return of either of those characters. I just don't think we're going to get it in such a short season. And
I would like to see Ventress come back, but was she still alive at the end of the original series?
Yeah, she was still.
I always liked that character, and I liked her journey. To where she's almost kind of like a neutral character and almost has a big a grudge against the the dark side as she does against the Jedi at this point. So I can see that character going either way. And I'm always a fan of the Jedi characters and the force wielding characters and stuff and lightsaber battles. So it'd be interesting if they kind of show us a little bit more of those things.
I'm sure we'll get some of that for sure.
Yeah.
But and obviously we still got Dooku's out there. I'm sure we'll see a little bit more of him because he's been pretty much all through Clone Wars as well. He was in several story arcs, so I'm sure we probably get a little bit more of him before we're all said and done, and even some more General Grievous. I'm sure we'll probably see him again.
Yeah, we'll pretty much have to. I think we'll do at least a couple more episodes based on how many story arcs of this there are. And if we have time with everything going on right now and people being quarantined and stuff, we may have time to do one for every episode. So I don't know, but assuming the internet, whatever cooperates with us is what I'm trying to say.
Exactly. Yeah, we had some issues today, but we got it done.
Oh my God, yeah. Issues.
It was looking very bleak there for a while.
No,
but we persevered. We struggled through. We offered sacrifices to the podcast gods.
I like how I said that. You're far too trusting.
As soon as I said that, my light actually went out. That's kind of creepy. They are voicing their displeasure.
Your little podcast is too remote for an effective demonstration.
That's all right. So, any final thoughts before we sign off?
No, I think I got them all. Out here,
My only thing I need to say, is I just, my heart goes out to Gundark, who, if you haven't heard, has been captured
Yes.
by the evil academists, and and they refuse
The
to let her go.
academologists.
The
Academologists.
academologists, and they're holding her for ransom. So we don't have a lot of money, so there's not much we can do.
No.
So if anybody wants to donate to free,
Yes.
our new campaign of Free Gundark, then we'll gladly take your money.
Free Gundark.
So hopefully at some point we will be a trio once again. But for now, you got us two
He's
losers.
basically like Echo right now.
Yeah, pretty much. Just sending us random messages every once in a while when she can.
Extracting her from there is going to be a painful experience for her.
Yeah.
And we don't know how much of her mind she'll recover.
Exactly. All right. Well, that's it for this episode. We'll be back with another Clone Wars wrap up after the next story arc, and we will see you then.
And
Thanks, guys. Thanks for listening.
I want to say congratulations, Corellian. We made it through this.
We did. We actually made it through this.
Oh no, I didn't record it. No, I didn't.
Yeah. I forgot to hit record. No
Yeah, that's it. Record.
Yeah, that would be the end. That'd be over.
Yeah.
Okay, now start over and do everything you just did.
Exactly the same.
For the last hour, exactly the same.
Yada
With the
yada
same
rebels.
the same enthusiasm, same excitement. Yeah, this, that,
Blah,
whatever.
blah, blah, Mandalorian, blah, 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 bad, bad.
Blah.
All right, we'll see you.
Cool. Yep. Take care.
Raising hell for so long. Been raising hell for so long. Why are you surprised? The fire's here. Why are you surprised? The fire's here. That old black crow has finally come home to roost at last. The pain of your present comes directly from your past. You should think